In the coastal municipality of San Remigio, Cebu, a local fishing fleet became the center of an intense legal dispute over election law. The conflict began when 153 transient workers, employed by the fishing business, filed applications to register as new voters in the municipality. Political opponents immediately filed petitions to exclude the workers from the voter roll. They argued that these individuals did not actually reside in the local barangay, claiming the workers merely used their employer's bunkhouse as temporary sleeping quarters between shifts at sea. The timing of these applications drew intense scrutiny because a relative of the workers' employer was actively running for municipal mayor in the upcoming election. When a large group of transient workers attempts to register in a single local precinct, it triggers immediate legal challenges over the precise definition and proof of legal domicile. After losing their initial arguments in the lower courts, the opponents bypassed the standard appellate route. They elevated the voter exclusion case directly to the Supreme Court by filing a Rule 45 petition for review on certiorari. They presented a highly specific legal question. Can an employee temporarily residing in an employer's bunkhouse register to vote in that municipality? The Supreme Court outright refused to answer the question. An appellate strategy collapses the moment litigators attempt to build a legal argument on top of an unproven allegation. The entire bunkhouse narrative was a ghost fact, a claim that the petitioners completely failed to establish in the lower courts. At the trial level, the petitioners attempted to prove the workers lived elsewhere by submitting a few uncorroborated sworn statements and affidavits. The workers countered with substantial documentary evidence, submitting their official employment certificates and community tax certificates to verify their physical presence and work in the municipality. The definitive piece of evidence was a formal certification of actual residency, issued directly by the local barangay captain. Rule 130, Section 44 of the Rules of Court governs how this evidence is weighed. It states that entries in official records made by a public officer in the performance of their duty carry significant evidentiary weight. Because a barangay captain is legally mandated to know the residents within their jurisdiction, their official certification enjoys a presumption of regularity. The court accepts it as prima facie evidence of residence. Official government acts executed in the line of duty easily overpower bare, uncorroborated allegations drafted by opposing political parties. Realizing their sworn statements were insufficient, the petitioners made a fatal strategic error. They officially requested the trial court to conduct an ocular inspection of the alleged bunkhouse to verify if the workers actually lived there. This request violates the core evidentiary principle of Rule 131, Section 1, the burden of proof. Because the petitioners asserted that the workers lived in a temporary bunkhouse, they alone carry the duty to provide the exact evidence required to prove that specific claim. Asking the court to go look for itself is a tacit legal admission that a party has failed to gather enough evidence to substantiate their own argument. Courts function strictly as neutral evaluators of the evidence presented. They are never active investigators tasked with building a party's unproven case. When the case reached the highest level of the judicial hierarchy, it hit an absolute jurisdictional boundary. Under Rule 45, the Supreme Court is not a trier of facts. The court employs a strict procedural filter to separate a question of law from a question of fact. A question of law asks what the law dictates given a specific, already established set of facts. This type of inquiry passes seamlessly through the court's review. A question of fact debates the truth or falsity of an allegation itself. The court rejects these outright, as that debate belongs exclusively in the trial courts. The petitioners tried to spring a trap by wrapping their unproven factual claim, the existence of the bunkhouse, inside a theoretical question of election law. Because the employer's bunkhouse remained an unproven allegation at trial, the Supreme Court cannot and will not issue a ruling on its legal implications. Putting procedural failures aside, Republic Act No. 8189 outlines the baseline requirements for voter registration. An applicant must be a citizen of legal age, residing in the Philippines for at least 1 year, and in the specific municipality for at least 6 months prior to the election. The law explicitly decouples property ownership from legal domicile. A voter can legally occupy a space as a paying lessee through a gratuitous arrangement with family or by being housed by an employer. Continuous physical presence for the required period coupled with steady employment in the locality, is legally sufficient to establish actual residence. To require property ownership as a prerequisite for registration would unlawfully restrict the constitutional right to vote exclusively to the landed class. No matter how novel or brilliant a legal theory appears on paper, a Rule 45 petition will instantly fail if the attorney tries to bypass a severe lack of trial evidence by disguising it as a question of law.